Israel, where war crimes committed against Palestinians are considered a PR problem. We dig into what happened at that Israeli prison, the leaking of the video, and the spin doctors now working overtime in Tel Aviv. Sudan, where journalism and accountability are among the many casualties in northern Darfur. And what's in a nickname? In Kenya, where the political space is full of them, the answer is a lot. The Israeli government is dealing with what it calls a public relations disaster, a case that, according to any legal system, is a clear-cut war crime. First, a warning to our viewers. This is a story about rape. At the heart of it is a leaked video showing Israeli soldiers in the process of torturing and sexually assaulting a Palestinian prisoner. The video is sickening to watch, even though the Israelis use their shields to hide what they are doing. And the resulting uproar in Israel has not been about the abuse. It's been about the exposure and the woman who leaked the footage, the Israeli military's chief prosecutor, who is now being branded as a traitor. She's been arrested, while the accused soldiers have been cast as some kind of victims. Dig a little deeper into this story, and it reveals so much about Israel's PR playbook when it comes to war crimes and cover-ups, when potential moments of reckoning turn into battles over optics. And it provides yet another glimpse into an Israeli society that is unwilling or incapable of coming to terms with what it has become. To hear the Israeli Prime Minister tell it, this particular story could prove to do unprecedented damage to Israel's global reputation. Was Benjamin Netanyahu referring to the indictment issued against him by the International Criminal Court for his alleged war crimes?
There are other people, like the prosecutor in The Hague, that seeks to handcuff us.
Was he talking about his security minister, taunting Palestinian prisoners last week, celebrating their abuse, predicting that death awaits them? Or was he citing these images from Gaza, filmed by Israeli soldiers, documenting and savoring on social media a genocide? It was none of the above. Netanyahu was talking about this video, showing Israeli soldiers hiding behind the cover of their shields, brutalizing a Palestinian prisoner, raping him, and the fact that the video was released to the world by an Israeli.
You can clearly see that they're doing something to this person. There are obviously charges brought against them for really horrifying violence, but you can't actually see any of that on the video. What you can see is a bunch of people covering up something that looks very, very violent.
Israel always tries to position itself as the civilized vis-a-vis the uncivilized. And so for them, rape is considered as the sort of ultimate act of barbarity. That's why the Israeli public and Netanyahu are so upset with the leaking of that footage, because it positions them in a place of barbarity. Because there is still in Israeli society this idea that the Israeli army is beyond barbarism, that they maintain this moral standard.
There have been two stages to this story. Stage one took place more than a year ago, with the release of this video from an Israeli prison, Sde Teman, in August of 2024. It was leaked anonymously to an Israeli news network, Channel 12.
הם לוקחים את המחבל, הנה הם כאן בפינת המתקן, כנראה מודעים למצלמות האבטחה, ומנסים להסתיר מעשיהם במגינים.
Right-wing Israelis, including politicians, then showed up at the prison and broke in, demanding that no soldiers be prosecuted regardless of what the video showed. It took 6 months, but the soldiers were eventually charged, although not for rape, for, quote, aggravated abuse. At the time, no one knew that the leaker of the prison video was Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, the top lawyer at the Israeli military, the same official who later brought the charges. Stage two began 10 days ago, when Tomer Yerushalmi revealed she was the source of the leak and then resigned. A few days later, she went missing, was reported to be on the run, then turned up and was arrested under charges including breach of trust and disclosure of official information. Do not mistake Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi for your typical whistleblower. Before exposing what happened at Sde Teiman, she had played a big part in covering up Israeli war crimes in Gaza by blocking the prosecutions of the officers and soldiers involved.
It depends on who you ask, but since you're asking me, she was a willing part of Israel's genocidal machine in Gaza. She actively prevented any kind of serious investigation into Israel's crimes from being opened, even though there was evidence galore. Why did she decide to leak this video? I think because she was outraged at the moral indignity as much as because this was turning into a political scandal that would end up at her doorstep.
And it's also possible that she understands, as a very experienced lawyer, that Israel is increasingly accused of war crimes and there is an open case against it in The Hague and the ICC, and that if she didn't do this, that she could be tried as well for being a part of covering up the crimes that the IDF has committed.
We see this at the heart of everything Israel does, that belief that it should be allowed to conduct military operations in whatever fashion it likes, to build settlements, to demolish homes, to bomb entire neighborhoods, to bomb other countries, that there should be no accountability. And this is the situation in which the former Israeli military advocate general finds herself in. It is a witch hunt. They are after her. There are people who talk about lynching. One wonders, if her life is still under threat even now.
Of all the deranged reactions this story has produced in Israel, it would be tough to top this one, from its Minister of Defense, Israel Katz. Katz called it a case of blood libel, referring to the age-old anti-Semitic tropes used to accuse Jews of killing for pleasure, even though the video was shot in an Israeli prison, on an Israeli camera, was leaked by an Israeli prosecutor to an Israeli journalist working for Israel's Channel 12, Guy Peleg, who then informed the Israeli public.
פרשת שדה תימן אינה פרשה של עלילה. איש לא העליל, הכל בכתב אישום שאנחנו נקריא את סעיפיו.
Channel 12 now says that because of the blowback, it has had to hire security protection for its reporter. And Peleg has come under fire on his own channel for doing something that not nearly enough Israeli journalists have done since October 7th, 2023, his job.
This kind of shows the difference between a real journalist, which is rare in Israel, and then two of the people who were kind of attacking him. One of them is a reporter, and they basically were just upset that he was reminding people that this isn't some kind of made-up story.
אנחנו מדברים עכשיו על מדינת ישראל, על חיילי צה"ל, וזה כאילו לשדר את הסרטון מחדש. מה זה טוב? זה הכל.
אם זה היה תלוי בי, היינו משדרים את הסרטון משום שהוא לב החקירה.
And basically they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to see it. So this is the culture and the atmosphere.
Having seen this short video clip, this classified footage, one wonders if one was allowed to look at all the CCTV footage in all these detention centers holding Palestinians, just what we would find out. We've only just seen one piece of footage, but if you had access to all the footage of the last few years, and indeed prior to the 7th of October 2023, what would we discover? Because the allegations of torture, abuse, sexual abuse have been going around for years.
Not that the coverage in the international media has come close to reflecting that. Mainstream Western outlets that routinely speak truth to power domestically continue to treat a genocidal Israeli state with kid gloves editorially. When the Israeli captives were freed by Hamas, those outlets feasted on that story, describing them as hostages. The Palestinians released by Israel, who are typically labeled as prisoners, attracted relatively little coverage.
Today's return of the last living Gaza hostages has also triggered the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
But the culprits in the State Teman sexual assault case know that the relative impunity they get from international journalists may not extend to the international justice system. Which is why, when they showed up in front of the cameras this past week, flanked by their lawyers, 4 of those 5 soldiers wore masks, hid their faces.
They're concealing their identity because it's become very rare for Israeli soldiers to conceal their identity, the West Bank and in Gaza as well. They know that the world accuses them rightfully of war crimes, and they conceal their identity to show the world 2 things. First, you won't outsmart us, and second, we don't care. You go ahead and accuse us as much as we want. We'll do the smart thing and conceal our identity so you won't be able to convict us.
The prime instigator of this assault has been going around on Israeli TV, on social media, giving interviews.
אתם שיקרתם לעם ישראל, הכפשתם, ואתם תשלמו על זה.
That really summarizes how much Israeli society will stand behind an army that has committed genocide in Gaza.
מנסים להציג אותנו, את הלוחמים, כברברים, כמו הנוח'בות.
And the fact that the Israeli public is much more outraged that this footage was leaked rather than what was happening in that footage. And that tells us everything we need to know about Israeli society.
I don't like to compare the treatment or the suffering, but there's Israeli hostages that were released a few weeks ago from Gaza, and they're already singing and dancing on TV. And I'm not sure that somebody who has gone through abuse in an Israeli prison is able to recover as quickly.
After a punishing siege that lasted 18 months, the Sudanese city of El Fasher fell to the rebel militia, the RSF, at the end of last month. What came next was pretty much what anyone following this conflict had been dreading: mass atrocities under a near total media blackout. And the few sources of information we do have are painting a grim picture. Ryan Coles is here with more on that.
El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur in Western Sudan, was, until it fell nearly 2 weeks ago, the last stronghold in the region of the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF. Since its fall, RSF fighters have posted videos of themselves rounding up and executing civilians. They have also targeted the handful of journalists who stayed in the city to document the siege. This video shows journalist Muammar Ibrahim, who worked for Al Jazeera Mubashir, shortly after RSF fighters captured him. There's been no proof of life since then, and his feed on X has gone silent. With journalists either killed, captured, or forced to flee, news organizations are relying on satellite imagery, eyes in the sky, to understand what's happening on the ground. These images show the scale of the violence: mass graves, burned out neighborhoods, even bloodstains visible from space. The Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale's University School of Public Health is leading much of this documentation. It has identified sites of mass killing and body disposal, warning that the emerging pattern of violence may rise to the level of genocide. The Sudan Doctors Network says that in the 3 days following El Fasher's fall, at least 1,500 civilians were killed, one of the deadliest periods since the war began in 2023. With the RSF now in control of every major city in Darfur, the prospect of Sudan's eventual partition grows ever more real. And with the number of journalists dwindling by the day, the question becomes who will be left to report what happens next.
Thanks, Ryan. Turning to Kenya now and the subtle but often cutting art of the nickname. Nicknames are a form of political satire, usually boiled down to a word or two. They're used all around Africa, but no one bounces them off politicians the way Kenyans do. Just ask the president, William Ruto, otherwise known as Zakayo or El Chapo, along with many other nicknames. Since taking office in 2022, then walking back his campaign promises to raise living standards and support small businesses, Ruto's reputation has taken a hit. Kenyan journalists do have some freedom to hold power to account, but they cannot go as far as satirists can with quality nicknames that are used to critique, question, and mock Ruto's leadership. Most of them are devised by younger Kenyans online, individuals who are more difficult to censor and whose messaging tends to stick. The Listening Post's Nick Muirhead now on William Ruto, the Kenyan president, with a long, growing, and politically problematic list of nicknames.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
William Ruto isn't the first Kenyan president to be given a nickname, but he has certainly racked up the most. And if that sounds like a sign of popularity, that every nickname is a mark of affection, think again. More often than not, it's how Kenyans take potshots at their president.
This man started off getting names when he was deputy president. And the most famous name was Arap Mashamba. Arap is son of, and Mashamba is land. Son of land, not really son of land as such, but somebody who grabs land.
Zakayo is a figure in the Bible who was a tax collector. Zakayo is a nickname that was given to Ruto in relation to the first moves that he made when he became president was to increase taxes.
El Chapo, it was the time that he was promising to provide chapatis, which is a form of bread for Kenyan school children.
William Ruto has spent more than 3 decades climbing Kenya's political ladder. For years, he sold himself as the hustler, a savvy outsider who could shake up the system.
Why do you call yourself the hustler? Because I am. I am the hustler in chief.
Since taking office in 2022, Ruto's government has raised taxes, borrowed heavily, and presided over a deepening cost of living crisis. It left Kenyans feeling hustled and earned Ruto the nickname Kusongo, borrowed from the 1980s song about a man who abandons his family.
The speed at which the nicknames are coming is reflective of the speed at which politics is transforming in the country. The presidency makes a decision and the public responds by calling them out, by calling him out, but they're not able to do it directly. They have to find a way of doing that that is humorous, that can sort of stay ahead of the anger and the wrath and the possible retribution.
I've used nicknames throughout my career as a cartoonist to kind of protect myself from accusations of libel or public slander. In the recent past, I've also kind of intensified my use of just adopting what the public is offering. Remember, you cannot protest every day. So society will still keep up the heat. The only way they can do so is through labeling him with names.
Humor is usually a product of absurdity when there's a clash or a contradiction between what is real and what somebody is talking about. So that contradiction is what is captured by the nicknames. It's a reaction to lack of trust and just being fatigued by how much the president is telling us he's going to do this, he's going to do the other, and then it's not done.
The use of humor to challenge power isn't new. It's part of a long tradition, one that galvanized under Daniel Arap Moi, considered by many to be Kenya's last dictator. He ruled under the slogan Nyayo, footsteps, a promise to follow in the path of his predecessor Jomo Kenyatta, the country's first leader post-independence. But as Moi's rule grew more authoritarian, Nyayo turned into a nickname with a meaning closer to trample than footsteps. Nicknames that pack a punch while giving a measure of protection extend far beyond Kenya's borders. In Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is mockingly called T-Pain, a jab at his painful austerity policies.
Who is suffering in the building? And T-Pain don't suffocate us in the building.
In Uganda, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija is dubbed as Minister of Enjoyment for laughing off the country's economic crisis.
Colleagues, money will come.
And in Tanzania, after the recent crackdown following the disputed election, President Samia Suluhu Hassan was nicknamed Idi Amin Mama, a reference to Uganda's infamous dictator Idi Amin. Across the continent, catchy nicknames are cutting inflated egos down to size.
It's important to remember that the figures of the executive in a lot of African countries are building on these long tradition of this quasi-godlike figure who should not be challenged, who should not be undermined. Giving the political figure a nickname is a way of looking directly at the sun, is a way of bringing the sun down to earth, is a way of bringing that powerful executive figure back down to earth.
What is so striking about this particular era is the disconnect between the African leaders and the youth. And the only way to capture that absurdity is through nicknames. And that's what the young people are doing.
Last year, youth anger over new taxes and government excesses grew online until it spilt over onto the streets. The government responded with a brutal crackdown, mass arrests, abductions, and online surveillance. By the end of the year, more than 60 people had been killed. The media were targeted as well. Stations critical of the president were threatened with closure. Protest coverage was banned and reporters threatened. But where the government can squeeze traditional information spaces, online ridicule is harder to reach, and so Ruto earned himself a new wave of nicknames. Kathinji, the Butcher, Must Go, a call for the end of Ruto's presidency, and One Term, a prediction that Ruto will only serve one term.
The nicknames One Term and Must Go are different because they are a call to action. It's an invocation of a broader political project, of a broader political ambition. Kenyans online are probably one of the most organized and vocal national constituencies, I would say, in the world. This is a digital constituency that has bullied former President Kenyatta II so much on social media that he deleted his social media accounts.
Hata Twitter munaona na hiyo, mimi niliondoka huko. Ngaona hii kitu ni bure, ni matusi tu.
What was so striking about the Moi era was the silence. There were so few people speaking. But now when you speak on the internet, you have immediate interaction with the public. You have people sharing what you're saying. I think it's also the Kenya government as a whole does not know what to do with a well-informed, vocal population with access to the internet.
We requested an interview from the president's office but got no response. Having failed to quash the nicknames, Ruto has since tried to co-opt them. He now dances to Kasongo, the song about the man who abandons his dependents. He laughs off Zakayo, the biblical tax collector.
Na kwanza Zakayo ndio aliona Mungu alimtembelea. Sasa wewe ujakuwa Zakayo utatembelewa na Mungu namna gani?
And he's even trying to flip one term into one more term. But will it work? Unlikely, because good satire rarely flows down from power. It rises up from the people, from those who turn frustration into laughter and laughter into defiance.
When I was a kid in elementary school, other kids used to call me the big-eyed one. And it really bothered me for a while until I told myself, but anyway, I can't do anything about my eyes. And they became my signature in my work, and I'm recognized for that. So Ruto is using basically the same kind of thing. It's a way to kind of brush off the ridicule, throw some of the ridicule back at you.
One reason why Ruto embraces the nicknames is that he's trying to take power from them. By laughing at the joke, by showing that he's in on the joke, that it doesn't hurt him, trying to reduce the impact of the joke. It almost does the opposite. I think it almost says to the public that we know that you're listening now, that you are actually paying attention to things that we say about them.
The Kenyan elite have become so mediocre, they have nothing that is original. And so what they are doing is copycatting or mimicking the young people. I think there's a hunger and a thirst among young people to understand why we are where we are. It's a thirst that I had not seen in young people. The current generation that is drawing a lot of empowerment and solidarity and creativity from laughter will eventually graduate to political creativity that will result in fundamental change. And that's why that kind of mimicry will not work.
And finally, Zoran Mamdani made history in New York this past week. He is now the city's mayor-elect, which, depending on your ideological perspective, is either an historic breakthrough or a national crisis. And you can put the New York Post in the latter category. The tabloid, owned by Rupert Murdoch, had been going after Mamdani for months, to no avail. And this was the Post's front page on the day after the election, depicting Mamdani, a democratic socialist, as a Marxist, a communist, wielding a hammer and a sickle. Anyway, Here's the best part. Even though that front page was designed to attack Mamdani and rile his supporters, it turns out they're actually loving it. The paper sold out at newsstands, which almost never happens anymore, and copies of it are now going on eBay for as much as $350. The message that the buyers are sending Rupert Murdoch, that despite Mamdani's election victory, capitalism is alive and well in New York. Who'da thunk it?